SpaceX launches Crew Dragon capsule on crucial test flight to the space station. Lifting off from the same launch pad where NASA astronauts flew to the moon and the Space Shuttle Atlantis roared into orbit on the final flight of shuttle program, SpaceX's Crew Dragon capsule, one of the long-awaited replacements for the space. News released by NBC News. Eyeing 2020, White House steps up socialism attack on Dems. Washington. As the White House gears up for the 2020 campaign, it's pressing the case that Democrats are rallying behind what it's calling the policies of socialism. Trying to portray Democrats as out of step with ordinary Americans, Vice President. News released by Associated Press on MSN. House panel demands White House turn over Jared Kushner clearance records. Requests for documents and witnesses were made by a Democratic-led committee looking into alleged security clearance abuses involving President Donald Trump's son-in-law. Washington, March 1, Reuters, a Democratic-led congressional panel on Friday. News released by HuffPost. Judge orders Roger Stone to explain imminent release of book that may violate gag order. Republican operative and longtime Trump friend Roger Stone faced fresh legal trouble Friday after a federal judge ordered his attorneys to explain why they failed to tell her before now about the imminent publication of a book that could violate his gag. News released by The Washington Post on MSN. Trump's surprising new ally in Mexico? The government. Mexico City. Mexican officials are carrying out the Trump administration's immigration agenda across broad stretches of the border, undercutting the Mexican government's promises to defend migrants and support their search for a better life. News released by the New York Times on MSN. America could get its first woman president. Meet the men who'd be first gentlemen. In 2020, America might finally elect its first female commander-in-chief. And with her could come the nation's first gentleman. In an already crowded field of Democrats seeking to challenge President Donald Trump, several women are among the. News released by HuffPost. Katherine Helmont, Who's the Boss, and soap star, dies at 89. Emmy-nominated actress Katherine Helmont, best known for her role on Who's the Boss, died on February 23 at her Los Angeles home due to complications from Alzheimer's disease. She was 89. The star, whose career spanned more than 5 decades, played. News released by Yahoo. Pakistan and India step back from the brink, but unease continues. Muzaffarabad, Pakistan/Srinagar, India, Reuters. A flare-up between arch-foes India and Pakistan appeared to be easing on Saturday after Islamabad handed back a captured Indian pilot, amid efforts by global powers to prevent a war between the nuclear. News released by Reuters. The problem for small-town banks: people want high-tech services. After the National Bank of Delaware County, a small community bank, bought Bank of America Corp.'s only branch in an upstate New York town, it didn't take long for things to go south. People waited in 4-hour-long lines at the Monticello, NY. News released by The Wall Street Journal. On this day, first non-stop around-the-world flight completed. March 2, UPI. On this date in history, in 1836, Texas proclaimed independence from Mexico. In 1925, the first system of interstate highway numbering was introduced in the United States. In 1949, a U.S. Air Force plane piloted by Captain James Gallagher. News released by UPI. Major winter storm forecast to hit much of country this weekend. Authorities in several states have issued advisories or announced preparations in advance of what forecasters say is a major storm that will affect much of the country this weekend. The National Weather Service said the major winter storm with an array. News released by NBC News. White woman calls police on black man after his dog humps her dog. Critics on the internet dubbed the Massachusetts woman dog park Diane after she called the cops at a dog park. A dispute over one dog humping another prompted a woman to call the police on a black man in Massachusetts, according to dog owner Franklin Baxley. News released by HuffPost. Watch, thugs pummel sleeping homeless men in Brooklyn, leave one in coma. 5 thugs pummeled a group of homeless men while they were sleeping on a Brooklyn sidewalk in a vicious attack caught on video, cops said. The muggers punched and kicked the 4 homeless in. News released by New York Post. Gap, Victoria's Secret, and even Tesla, 4,300 store closures already announced this year. Just this week, Victoria's Secret said it will shut around 50 locations in 2019 when it normally closes closer to a dozen each year. Gap said it's closing 230 of its namesake brand stores over a 2-year span, and JCPenney announced it plans to. News released by CNBC on MSN. UFC 235 Jones vs. Smith, start time, how to watch, full fight card and more. This Saturday the UFC plays host to UFC 235 and the return of Jon Jones, most likely the greatest fighter on the planet currently competing. He faces off against massive underdog Anthony Smith. The fighters have all made weight and all that's left it to. News released by CNET. Toni Preckwinkle campaign launches attack ad on mayoral rival Lori Lightfoot. Cook County Board President Toni Preckwinkle's mayoral campaign blasted Lori Lightfoot's legal career with a new attack ad on Friday, just hours after Lightfoot announced her own 6-figure ad buy for a 30-second spot that railed against the Chicago. News released by Chicago Tribune on MSN. How Cowboys scout Gil Brandt built America's team and revolutionized football. Former Dallas Cowboys top scout Gil Brandt's Hall of Fame nod, received over Super Bowl weekend, was long overdue. As Vice President of Player Personnel from 1960 to 1988, Brandt worked with head coach Tom Landry and President General Manager Tex Schramm. News released by Dallas Morning News. Manafort seeks sentence well below guidelines in Virginia case. Washington, Reuters, lawyers for Paul Manafort, U.S. President Donald Trump's former campaign chairman, on Friday asked a federal judge in Virginia to hand down a sentence that is significantly below guidelines, according to a court filing. Manafort, who? News released by Reuters on MSN. Rock and roll pioneer Jerry Lee Lewis suffers stroke. Los Angeles Jerry Lee Lewis, the 83-year-old rock and roll pioneer, suffered a minor stroke Thursday night, according to his representative. Right now we are just asking for prayers, and asking the media to express how important Jerry is, his. News released by NBC News.